So, hello everyone, and welcome to your Austrian orange wine class. This class is part of a series of events happening this week for Virtual Orange Wine Week. My name is Amanda Claire Goodwin, and I am your host, chat box moderator, and I'm also the founder of National Orange Wine Day, which was founded back in 2018. And I founded Virtual Orange Wine Week, which is new this year. Today, your highly esteemed and well-accomplished instructor is Miss Pascaline Lepeltier. She is a French-born sommelier. She's a wine enthusiast, 40 under 40 beverage influencer. She is a partner at Ramsey's. She's also a wine educator. She teaches for the Wine Scholar Guild, court, and many other seminars and happenings within the wine community. Hello, Pascaline. Thank you so much for teaching this amazing perspective on Austrian orange wines.
Hi, I'm very happy to be with you guys. And thanks to all our friends in Austria right now to be with us. So great. So let's do it. So thanks again for having me. It's a subject dear to my heart to speak about orange skin contact and skin macerated wine, because I think they are amazing wine. And I hope this hour, a little bit more, we are going to try to do an hour and 15 minutes with you guys today, because it's a lot to cover. So we can't cover everything. And but I'm sure there will be a lot of questions. So just quickly, in terms of a little bit of housekeeping. We are not going to take questions during the proper part of the seminar and then the exchange with Christophe, Arwin, and Christian that I think just arrived. We'll take them at the end. So if you can re-talk, you can taste the wine. And I think it would be interesting to have questions at the end with a multiple perspective. Just to make sure everybody is on mute too. So, you should be, just for the moment, hearing my voice. I'm in the cellar of the restaurant. I was inspired by Christophe, who also is a cellar in his winery, to go and taste in the cellar. So how is it going to be? I'm just going to do a quick 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes max on going through a couple of concepts I think I would like just to talk about orange and skin contact. And then we're going to dive in Austria, of course, and then we'll chat about first Christophe. So thanks, Christophe, for being here with us today. So Christophe from the area of the Kremstal on the Hollenberg. Started his own estate, I think in 2013 with 5 hectares and grow a little bit more since, in 12, all in biodynamic. And I think Christophe makes some of very, very unique wines and projects. And I think he's an extraordinarily talented winemaker from this area. And I have to say, I learned so much about Gruner and about a new perspective of wine thanks to him. So I think it's really, really great to have you with us today. I will taste your Hollenberger non-vintage Gruner Veltliner today. After that, we'll go a little bit more north and we're going to taste someone with Arwin Jurzic. And I'm also very, very happy to chat with Arwin, because one of the first winemakers I met when I went in Austria a couple of years ago, and I think he's doing a superb, tremendous work with his wife, Stephanie. Also family estates, also took over in the 2009, 2010, I think. Transform to organic, and it's a dedicated vigneron to the vineyard, but has been doing so many amazing projects on the side. And I think it's today one of the most impressive line, both of classic style, but also of experiment in the low intervention. And I think today we're going to really see it, and we are going to taste the Belle Naturale 2019. Joining us when I think is in a room right now is Christian Chida. So I'm very, very happy to have Christian with us from in the midst. So we're going to go all the way down to the Burgenland on the eastern side of the Neusiedlersee. And as I can see, I have an amazing German accent. A year of practice in France didn't work, so I apologize for if I don't get the name right and the pronunciation right. But I'm going to do my best. And I think it's really great to have Christian, because not only he put a new shade of light on this part of Austria, but he has a very specific vision about the style. You make only one skin contact wine, a very specific cuvée that doesn't call orange. The Mädchen Vergoren, and I think it's really great to be able to chat with Christian about that. And finally, he couldn't be with us today, But Gerhard Pitnauer also, we have a wine on the lineup, and so I will talk a little bit about this wine. He sent me a lot of talk and notes on that. It was important to get Gerhard because I discovered that it seems that Gerhard was the first one to have made skin maceration wine, maybe in the new way in Austria in 1997, one cuvée. So that's quite when you think about it, it was 23 years ago. So that's quite a long time. So I just want to also thank Skim at Some Good Wine for just putting that flight together. If you have the flight, please pour yourself, taste the wine side by side. I think they're fantastic. They are very unique and different. So thanks for that. So let's go and let's start to talk about that. So the picture you were just seeing was in fact from Alwyn Winery, and I think we are going to be able to talk about that when you're going to talk with you. Alwyn, some Grunner and Chardonnay in amphora from this vintage. So quickly on Austria and orange and skin contact. So I think it's super important to talk Austria in this context because today, without a doubt, Austria has been becoming a leading country for the style, both in terms of quantity and in terms of quality, of course, alongside the absolutely historical area of Georgia, of the northern part of Italy, of Friuli, and of course of Slovenia. But without a doubt, Austria today is up there in terms of quality and quantity. So as you all know, the kind of revival of orange and skin contact wine is quite recent. And I can only encourage you to read the book of Simon J. Wolfe about the Amber Revolution. I think it's an amazing book to talk about that. So a lot of my information I got from Simon and other research, but amazing book. But 30 years ago, basically there was almost no wine available for us in the market, and today is just extraordinary. It's everywhere. Every wine country almost has orange and skin contact wine in a very vast and large spectrum of wine, and you have very enthusiastic wines. There is like new wines. The range is almost starting to make almost not really definable. And I hope today we're going to try to define a little bit more what you can get from this wine. And I think they are more than a style and a whole new category on their own. And they're a real new category for the simple reason they can express terroir and encourage us to taste in a very different way. So we're going to talk about orange. We're going to also talk about skin contact and skin macerated, and I will explain you. I prefer to call that skin contact just in terms of the range, and we're going to talk with all the winemakers today to see how they prefer to call it. But of course, orange is such a good, catchy name that kind of is a nice entry door to the style, but maybe narrow-minded a little bit compared to what you can get out of this wine. So before we don't go into Austria, just a couple of words about what I'm just talking about. Okay. So terminology, I think it's very important to talk about terminology. I'm a background in philosopher, so I think a concept is, having a good definition sometimes is helpful. So many words has been used to talk about this style: orange, amber, janku. You have a list here: macerato, skin contact, skin macerated, and orange wine. What I just want to say here is right now there is just a couple of definition and legal stuff coming out in different countries, and we're going to see that. But I think it's quite fascinating to see that we are working towards trying to talk about this wine, and just think that in 2005, Eric Asimov didn't even know how to call this kind of wine. So been dealing with the term since quite 16 years right now. My experience is that most of the people are referring to as orange, but I think by doing so, you may just once again narrow-mind the term a little bit too much. So why? Because if you talk about orange, often you kind of think it's also natural, it's also in amphora, it can be oxidized, and there is a lot of quite of confusion. So not, of course, all orange wine are natural wine. A lot of orange wine or skin contact wine are made in a natural way because it's how the style came back. I think kind of a way to stabilize the wine and using that technique to try to make low intervention wine. So just to be clear, all skin contact of orange wine are not natural and vice versa. They are not, of course, all of them that are known in amphora, even though it's kind of the way that the style came back, especially for Gravner and Georgia. And no, they are not oxidized. And I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions. I think there is a different relationship with oxygen that makes us kind of not really know how to talk about that. And it's why it's such a new way of expressing a place. And and an area. And they are not necessarily pellicular maceration, because pellicular maceration for me tends to also involve a very technical part of temperature control and like a kind of a cold soak. And this one are not that, they're a bit more than that. So it's why I think thinking about this one about the new color is great. And Simon developed that at length, thinking that is part of a new spectrum. Orange is like a red wine, is white grape macerated with a skin. So definitely a fourth of a fifth color, depending if you count on a vin jaune. But from the color, let's go to the technique. And I really like skin contact because skin contact allows two things. Compare first to skin maceration. I think the idea of contact brings some humanity in the relationship to that. It's not just a pure technique when you just macerate. There is kind of a visceral aspect to that. And I think that also connects to the overall holistic of this wine, including the farming. And from orange, I think when you say skin contact, you don't in that case mention any kind of ideas about the final product, because one of the things with this style of wines, they come in a spectrum. So some of them are filtered or not filtered, the color change, some of them are sweet, some of them are off dry, some of them are bone dry. They have a minimum of maximum alcohol, whatever. So I think skin contact for me is kind of the best way to describe what I'm going to talk about. So just that, I'm going to go very quick here because I think you all know about that. Just 2 words on techniques, because I think all of us today, we want to kind of go behind the techniques. Techniques is super important. It's like when you're testing, analytic testing, it's super important stuff that you need to know to allow you to go behind something, to go above something. So here is just a couple of moments where you kind of have an impact on how the skin is going to impact the final wine. What I want to say is like, sometimes we are thinking, okay, it's really going back to tradition and what was done centuries ago. It seems like, yeah, in a way it's the case, and in other ways it's not the case. Why? Because centuries ago we didn't have the technique, we didn't have the knowledge, we didn't have a lot of the skill we currently have. And also a couple of like decades, 100 years ago, a lot of the things were really about stabilizing the wine. It was really like something that could stay and stay drinkable for quite some time. So the priority was quick fermentation and make sure the wine was not turning to vinegar. I think today, and especially since Grafner and Radikon and everything that's happening in Austria, we're at another dimension, because it's more than just stabilizing the wine. It's about making fine wine with ambition, with quality that can express terroir. It's a whole new dimension that I can only call a new category of wine. So are they inspired? Yes, but they are definitely bringing way more. So when can a detail, when can something can happen that's gonna create an intervention of the skin, and at the end it's going to leave an amazing spectrum of wines. Of course, when you get the grapes, which type of grapes are you working with, which color, are the aromatic grape, are the non-aromatic grape, thick skin, thin skin, what's the structure, a lot of alcohol, not a lot of alcohol, botrytis, no botrytis. Then what is done? Do you destem? Do you hold full cluster? And you have all the spectrum in between. Then how do you make it? In which vessel? What is the size? What's the exchange with the oxygen during that? I'm sorry. Oh, I went a bit too fast. As you can see, I'm getting very enthusiastic about the subject. Yeah, so what type of vessel are you using? Then, and maybe more interesting, in what about the maceration, the fermentation? Temperature, length, extraction, how long, how many punch down, no punch down, open top fermenter, not open top fermenter? Are we just continuing the fermentation, the maceration post-fermentation, and so on and so on and so on? When it's fermented, what do? Do you keep the free run juice separate? You blend it back with a press. After that, what do you do? How do you age the wine, the length, the toppings, the temperatures, and how do you blend? Are you just doing one single vineyard? Are you making it with multiple different grapes? Are you like a chef? You pick a little bit of that, 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 you make the blend. Which vessel, filter, unfiltered, and of course, among that, conventional winemaking with yeast or no yeast, and so on. I'm not even talking about the farming. So at the end, what I just want to say here is there is so many technical details to know about that. And I think in the way the winemaking is very great to talk with the guys, is like we are just at the beginning of just understanding what all this element can bring with the grapes. It's just like so many parameters. So we can focus on that. And we can, of course, say, okay, I'm taking that grape because there is some aromatic compound on the skin, there is some precursor, so I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to do like a full destem, but I'm going to take a little bit of 10% whole bunch, and then I'm going to press it, I'm going to macerate it for 20 days, and you start to get a bunch of numbers and a bunch of data, which I think are interesting, but we need to, I think, go behind that to just retry to appreciate wine in a different way, because I'm not sure yet we can say, oh, I taste that in this wine as a sommelier because, oh, it seems that he has been 20 days on the skin in an amphora with 1.9 per day. So we are, it's like where, and I really like that quote from Alice, is like, it's like the style or the technique. Yes, but not today. I think this is very important, the wine have a purpose, and we're in a moment where things are moving and things are happening, and the per se technical data, personally, I'm not as interested by that right now about the result and the connection to the terroir. So we'll talk a bit more about that with everybody. So just quickly about the sommelier perspective. I think these wines are absolutely fantastic. I think the first time I started to taste them and work with them was in fact in New York, thanks to Levi Dalton. And I was not at his inauguration dinner here in New York at Convivio, but a little bit later. And I was like, what's that? What's that? I never tried something like that. And since then, I've been working with this wine, and they've been expanding my ability to taste every type of wine, I have to say. Because they kind of counterbalance any kind of analytical grid I've been learning on a more classic, because it just destroys this analytical grid, it transcends this analytical grid. And from learning about the colors, that orange color doesn't necessarily mean that the wine, once again, is oxidized, from aromas that I never had before and are evolving in a very, very different way, from structure, where I realized that you can have a low alcohol wine and an extraordinary amount of structure at the same time, thanks to some very specific tannins that evolve in a very specific way, that a new expression of mineralities that I didn't really know how to pick up before, that transcends just like the pure way of tasting bone, classic, translucid, dry white, to revealing new expression of a grape I never know before, including especially Sauvignon Blanc, which I think is a big one for me that I thought I knew. And as soon as I started to taste Sauvignon Blanc in different skin expression, I'm like, we can express so much more from terroir. I think I knew. From pairing and serving, that definitely allowed me to work with dishes, sauce, compound that before I was very, very limited to work with in terms of wine. So for me, these wines are really a new landscape of tasting, and I'm still in the work of learning about them. And it's why it's transcending my tasting grid. And because the wines that I really consider the most successful are also done in a low intervention way with a very big attention to farming, you double on that the feeling of liveliness, energy, dimension, duration in this wine that are also quite tricky today to talk about. So we are just in a curve for me of discovering a new vocabulary and a new approach of the wine that is way more holistic thanks to this wine. I think it's really fantastic. And what is really great is the best example are both extraordinarily serious. I think they can extraordinarily terroir expressive, but also highly drinkable, which is something that I think is quite remarkable and noticeable to see, but not all of them can do that. And I think the very best example, and I think we're going to test them today, 4 of them today. Yes, you can test terroir, and yes, you can test the place in another dimension that even the current way of doing white wine I've been able to express. For me, the taste different than red. Just because I think you grew up with learning about how to taste red wine, and here you are just in a whole new world of wine. So they give us that, and they give us a time of duration. I think they give us a time to think again about wine is made in a certain time, and the way you taste them, that duration express itself in the palate thanks to this new way of extracting way more from the plant. It gives you a whole holistic approach of the wine. I think you can really taste top farming, and you can only really taste great skin contact wine if there's a holistic approach in a wine. So let's go quickly to Austria before I get too excited about that, because I also want to drink the wine with you guys. So I put kind of a little history of this style globally and in Austria. And here you have 2 of the fundamental books that were written in the 19th century when we talk about skin maceration, skin contact wine made in Austria and in Styria, because at the time it was also part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So don't forget that at the time Austria and Hungary were way largest area, and the part of Styria was also going to Slovenia. So there was a lot of, in Italy, so there was a lot of exchange from that very specific part of this empire. So these two books, and there is a third one, you can find them, by the way, on the internet. You can just go, you Google them, and you can download them. So if you're really good in German from the 19th century, which I absolutely am not, you can have a blast reading them. But so Franz Ritter was talking about the wine in the Vipava Valley during the Austrian Empire, and was talking about skin contact made in the Vipava. The big book to read about it is the one from Maciej Vertovec, which was a priest in Styria, in Slovenia, and really the winemaking from Slovenia is really talking about skin contact. He's talking about the fact that the North country, like Germany, have a cleaner style. They don't need the skin because fermentation goes so faster, so you can do direct press and they go into barrel. But in the southern part, in Styria in Slovenia, they tend to be better with skin contact to make the fermentation go faster. And according to him, 2 weeks is great, 10 to 14 days, but there is a tradition of making that longer. And then you have the one from 1873 from Hohenbrück, which also make mention of Styria as a place in Austria where a lot of skin contact was done. So there is a tradition in the country, and definitely at the time making skin contact was because stabilization of the wine, and something was just logistic things. I learned recently that in the Jura, they were doing it too. They called that the cuvée. When they didn't have enough press, they couldn't press, the Savagnin was kept on skin. And in fact was giving more better yellow wine. So there was a tradition of skin contact for yellow wine in the Jura in the 19th century and in the early 20th century too. But then we switch, and the only person that I understood was kind of a link between the before and the after was Chotard, that was still making this kind of wine in 1974. So first, and still making skin contact in the whole traditional way was Chotard. 1919, a real commercial one, and then we start to go with a new phase, which is like rediscovering the tradition and starting with very, very strong idea of quality, of identity, and making fine wine with, of course, the first trial of Radikon and Grafner. So for Radikon was in 95, and for Jost Grafner was in 1994. With both of them, the two commercial cuvées were in 1997. They discovered that back at the same time, but didn't really talk about it. And definitely inspired by what will be the future. And for Grafner, it's very strong to say, this is the best way to get my identity of my terroir, because I didn't get it with the modern technological way of my previous wine. But at the same time, Gerhard Pitnauer, 1997, skin maceration white. And it was just a trial, because it was telling me that it just was making so much red wine. He wanted to try and see how can I do it with a white? And he made a trial and he liked it, but the problem was two things. First, it was really selling a lot in the German market. And Germany was really about, we want clean wine. We just want clean wine. So he didn't get the market, and even in the country didn't get the market. And then he thought it was really interesting, but he realized that, especially after when he tried again in 14, that the farming was not there too. Like you really have to get great farming for white grapes to do really great expression of that. Then starting the 2000, the wave arrives. And then starting this decade, you started to have the exchange in Styria that played a very big game. In that, with the first cuvée and trial with Muster and Chippy, like around the early 2000, Christian starting to make his first cuvée, is going to talk about it in 2006, Fred Leumer in 2006. It's really when suddenly between exchange and talk and all the wine movement, you start to really see a beginning of explosion. I saw almost like 45 cuvées created between that decade. So it's a lot for a country like Austria when so many other countries were kind of behind. Orange wine is important for you. The term was quoted by David Harvey in 2004, which is at the time when Denmark and Japan started to be a big player just because it became a market. And they were interested by getting this wine, and you can start to sell this wine. So suddenly things start to go very quick. You have a kind of a concept of a name, you have importers interested, you have a market that start to be interested in Copenhagen, in the north, and in Japan. You start to have critics interested. Eric Asimov wrote about this one in 2005, Jancis Robinson in 2007, Levy put that crazy dinner in New York in 2009, and then that was the explosion. If I'm not mistaken, you started in 2009, I win with some skin, according to what you told me. So we like, and then it was like one after one after one, with some really dedicated farmers and wine growers, but also very interesting, the first skin contact from the Menvacha, very, very big estate, was in 2010. Small production under 1,000 bottles, but we're like, wow, it's reaching a whole new dimension, and the inner market of Austria start to get interested. The first official tasting of orange wine happened in 2015 in Decanter, and that was a pretty big deal. Simon organized it with Isabelle Legeron and Christelle Guibert at that time from Decanter, and you have 2 wines from Austria that makes the cut above 90 points. A cuvée from Andras Csepi and a cuvée for Seth Muster. So that was also a big deal, to suddenly recognition, Decanter, and really, really great exposure for that. And then we are now in the moment of the recognition. So what's happening right now, you realize that this kind of wines, the more you are selling them, the more you need to try to export them. It's kind of difficult because in which category are they falling? And today there is no international definition for orange wine anywhere in the world, but there is country, because of their growers, they couldn't export their wine. That was the case in South Africa with Craig Hawkins, with Tessalonga. He couldn't export his wine to the UK, so he put together a little group of growers, and they went to the South Africa board and they said, we need to have a category so we can export our wine. And this was how the first official definition started in South Africa in 2004. They call it skin fermented wine, and it has to be made 4 days on the skin of a minimum. It has to go through malolactic. It can be cloudy. It has to be dry. It has to have less than 40 parts per million sulfur. You can export it. Same thing happened in Ontario. Your producer of Niagara wanted to sell her wine. Ontario is very controlled, no category. She couldn't sell it. She went to the VQA, and they decided about a definition. Then she could sell it. And there is authorizing for 10 days minimum of maceration in Ontario, and there is no other regulation. At that same period, I just wanted to put it out. You started to see orange wine in supermarket, in Aldi, in Austria, 2017. That's pretty cool, I think. Like, you see that the production is everywhere. 2018, Simon put the book out, and I think there was a very, very big deal because suddenly you have somebody putting out the history of the style with a very, very encompassing list of producers. In 2018, Austria, you started to try to define orange wine, and it's part of the text. So it can have cloudy texture and oxidative note for an orange wine, and it can only be for Landwein or Österreich. But right now, these are the only 3 countries in the world that have been trained to talk about orange wine or skin contact and to try to define them, just for you to know. So we are just in the beginning of recognition, and in a lot of countries, in fact, the problem is this style of wine, they don't fall under the quote-unquote appellation system, or they're out, so you have to call them also often table wine or whatever, and you don't have really a sense of place. And I think that needs to get that sense of place, because this one can express a sense of place. Okay, so I think Austria is made for skin contact. I think you guys are made for skin contact. I just listed a couple of reasons, but why? The location. I think the fact that you are stuck between, this connection between Slovenia, between Italy, the size of the country, the inspiration is Hungary, the techniques that you learn from, the precision you have in your farming, that makes it like you are in a bowl of inspiration. I think the climate, the terroir, and the grape variety are quite fantastic. You have this really great long growing season. You can preserve freshness. You have a lot of very strong different terroir types that you can express through that, from of course, the metamorphic to the limestone to even sandier soil, to all the soil type of variation of clay and steria. So I think soil type, and you have the grape variety. You have amazing historical grape variety from the non-aromatic to the aromatic that I think are very suited for that. From the Gruner to the Chardonnay to the Traminer to the Welsh Riesling to, of course, the Muscat. You have a very fantastic palette of grapes. Then what is really great is this pioneer, forward-thinking winemakers that the country is breeding. Super skilled, well-trained, very, very precise in their technique. A lot of exchange, and dedicated to quality farming. And that makes the fact that there is a stimulation, and I think that's really, really a key point, to have these pioneers and this skilled winemaker trained. Quality, the fact that we're not necessarily talking about bulk wine here. We're talking about wine at a certain level of quality. And that is a very key point too. That means experimentations, I mean, pushing the limits, that means thinking forward, and that the country can do that. Farming, the fact that there is a real attention paid to organic, sustainable, and biodynamic farming is a really big deal. And I deeply believe true expressive skin contact with terroir can only come from this kind of farming. And so that there is a movement here. The fact that historically you drink your wine with food, and this type of wine are amazing with food. They are made for food, they are made for very specific food, and they attracted all these like drinkers in Scandinavia also with this very specific way of preserving, with the work with umami, with the work for a lot of vegetables, something in Japan, which I think really helped. The fact that there is this connection with food and wine, that's a very big thing. And then the export, the fact that this wine, I think, is a kind of wine, if you don't grow with it or live with it, having this export market and the work that has been done in Austria and the wine marketing board, in fact, since years to promote that and to put Austrian wine in very specific places like Denmark, like Copenhagen, early on with a more classic style, and then arrive with a new style with places like Noma asking for specific cuvée from Austria, made a very, very big deal. So I put the market at the end because it's always, you always forget that if there is no market, it's very complicated to make something and sell it. Like there is this dynamics that needs to happen. So I think Austria is made for skin contact wine. So quickly on Styria. So today we are not testing anyone from Styria, and we are not testing anyone from Vienna. It's just we didn't have the time, the ability to get the cuvée, but of course test one from Styria. This group of Taste of Life has been making tremendous benchmark skin contact wine since almost 20 years now. So I will encourage you to taste their wine as well as Karl Schnabel, that I understood quite of the pioneer of the style in the area. And something in Vienna, it's less producer in Vienna, of course, but you start to see popping up some of the wine here. But every wine region of Austria is making today skin contact wine. So go everywhere, there will definitely be something for you. And once again, why? Because of all the regions I explained. So now that I talked a lot, it's going to be time to talk with you guys. and we're going to start with you, Christophe. Okay. So we are going to go here, guys, on the west in Niederösterreich. We're going to go to this little southern part of the Kremstal. We're going to go in Hollenberg, which is a very specific place in Kremstal, to talk with this handsome gentleman on the way. So let's start and let's get a glass of wine. So what's fascinating me with first, I love the wine, but what's fascinating with me with your project is you have a very unique approach of the place, and you came to skin contact wine and you make in a very unique way. Can you develop your idea of what you call a mind tour of the terroir, a mental projection of the terroir? What's meant for you, what's meant for the Hollenberg, and what does that imply for the wine we're tasting today with the skin? All
right, first of all, hi to everyone. Thanks to Amanda and Constance for all the organization. Thanks for Pascaline for a lot of information, what I still didn't know yet. So it's quite, for us as winemaker, very, very interesting, and a lot of things to learn, details. And thanks for being here and talk to you guys about my wine. And about your question, Pascaline, so you mentioned that kind of the mind tour about the terroir. Well, it's a question about my beginning here. As I founded my own winery, I thought, what you think about what style of wine you want to produce, and of course, like almost every winemaker in the world wants to produce wine from your place, from your specific place, which is just possible to produce here. This is the kind of a basic idea of terroir. And I had the chance to travel a lot through European wine growing regions, and also taste the wines there. And as I started and as I founded the winery, I thought myself, okay, just think like being an enthusiastic wine tourist here now in Hollywood. Forget all the traditions what you have, forget all the vinification knowledge you have, be free from all that and just walk through the village, walk through the vineyards and see what's special here. The calcareous conglomerates, where I have an example over here, if you can see me, and the smooth terraced slopes, or the rough wind which comes from the Danube River, which is very close to the vineyard. And you ask yourself, if you go through that and you collect all that emotions, how would a wine taste like? How should it taste from that place? And this was in the end where my first wine was founded in my mind. So I had an idea where I want to go, and after 2 years winemaking, I recognized if I want to reach my target, if I want to get this to this mind wine what I have in my vision, I have to work with more vintages. So this is the reason why you having now the Hollenburger Grüne Veltliner as a non-vintage blend in the bottle. This is always three vintages. It's a blend of 3 vintages, and the reason why it's that, because it's I can blend with different vinification methods, where the part with skin contact is a very important one, and so I can get closer to my target, because the wine what I have in my mind is quite very biodiverse, like the origin, like Hollenburg here as well.
So how did you, little by little, what did the skin is bringing you to express that? What element did you see that will give that dimension you had in your head and you may not have had with just like direct press wine and just single vineyard wine?
That's because of structure. So if you mainly working with direct pressed white grape juice, it's they got straight aromas, straight flavors, but less structure on the palate. And what I was having in my mind was quite wines which have a moderate alcohol, because here we are in a cooler or cool climate area, and but still, beside that lower or moderate alcohol, I wanted to have something which just have structure on the palate. And to reach these body and that structure, I need at the end I needed to work with skin contact wines. And as I mentioned before, I'm also not just working with different vintages. I'm also working with different, I call it projects, because this was from the very beginning as the winery was founded. But you can call it techniques. So I'm working with different kind of techniques of winemaking, and therefore I'm also not just working with skin fermented or skin contact wines. I got 3 different skin contact methods in one wine. What we have here, the Hollenburger Grüne Veltliner.
Can you detail that a little bit, and how you think this can help to express the terroir? The place with like this different dimension of, once again, that time and that feeling sensation you are looking for to express, and that vibrancy?
Well, there I have to mention first that at the very beginning, as I started to taste skin macerated or skin contact wines, I recognized that there are a lot of different styles, and also we are not just used to it. We didn't learn it in school, of course, but skin contact wines can express the terroir in the same way like a classic white wine can do. I'll give you an example. So in the Hollenburger Grüne Veltliner, There is a one part skin contact part, which is quite short on skins. It is from the very top of the hill. It's the pure and poor calcareous conglomerate. And because it's on the top of the hill, it's also quite one of the coolest places and the coolest spots. I just have it shortly on skins. And these develop spicy aromas with lower or smooth tannins. And then the opposite, I have from the bottom of the hill, where there is a bit of loess covering this calcareous conglomerate, so which means the soil is a bit richer and the climate is way warmer. I have a technique or a wine where the grapes are for 1 year in the barrel, so they're for 1 whole year on skins, and then they age. They get pressed after 1 year and age another 2 years in barrels. And this is, of course, the aromas are also like the soil. The aromas are richer, more yellow, and also the wine got, because of the 1 year on skins, it got some richer tannins and way more structure on the palate.
Yeah, what I love with this wine is it's the finish is taking you with so many dimensions, like the way that there is so dense but so light at the same time, and that coating of different feeling of tannin and saltiness is just so unique and so. I never tried something like that, you know, and it's like I never tried either as only my experience with this type of soil type in your area, because you're in a very specific micro island of soil too, with expression of Grüne-Veltliner. But at the same time, I'm like that. It's exactly the kind of the mental projection I can put in this wine, and it's also extraordinarily stable. Like I tried the wine over like a couple of days, and that finish, that for me is the definition of the place and the minerality in wine generally, is like is a signature of this wine. It's really impressive for that complexity of tannic structure at the end.
Thanks a lot for those words.
Oh.
But again, what you say is quite a big part. What I had as target, what I had in my mind, I wanted to play with opposites, because this is the same thing like what the origin, the terroir here is as well, because we are on many borders. We are on the border of another wine growing area. We are on the border. We are like in between or in the border to two rivers which are influencing the hill with its wind, so warm wind, cold wind, and there automatically between the wines and on the hedges, a lot of kind of rare and seldom plants naturally are growing there. And I also wanted to have this idea in the wine. So the opposite, like you say. So on one hand side, to have a great smooth body, but on the other hand side, to be not high in alcohol, or to have ripe, matured aromas as well as fruity aromas in the same wine.
I think it's a great result. So we are going to move to Erwin, because I think we could speak together for hours, but seminar is on a just two questions, like quickly. I'm going to ask the same to everybody, but how did this cuvée change yourself as a winemaker and as a taster to express your wine? And which term do you prefer to talk about this wine, like orange, skin contact, skin macerated? What's your favorite term?
So I prefer, if I have to choose, I prefer skin contact, like you did as well. But the reason why I would choose skin contact is because I think skin contact is something beautiful in many ways. So it sounds nice. I mean, now with COVID, skin contact is a different story. Usually it's something nice and positive. And but if I have a presentation and if I present my wine, I would speak less about it. I would just, pour the wine, and just if the people really ask, oh, it's special, and they're interested about the wine and ask how is it made, then I would mention the the skin contact and so on. And about the question before, it was, what was the question before?
What did he bring you as a winemaker and as a taster in terms of?
At the beginning, it was, as I started to taste wines like this, it was really kind of, mind-blowing, because it was a totally new world for me as well. And I felt really hard to find the right words for it, because it was, it was just, everything was new. So the best concept to move on there is just taste as much as possible, and to really understand then these words you were saying. I think you, as a winemaker, spoken as a winemaker, you have to do that techniques on your own to see why it tastes like that. And then for a winemaking mind, everything makes more sense, and you can describe it really better. But then is the problem, nobody understands you. So it's hard. It's hard.
But yeah, we understand the wine when we taste it together. That's quite important.
That's the most important one.
Well, thanks a lot, Christophe. That's really awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We will get back to you with some Q&A, I'm sure, at the end. So, Awin, let's go on the Comtal. Let's cross the Danube. So we just got here, Langelois, and here you are with Stephanie. So, so Belle Naturelle, which is a beautiful name, by the way, I can pronounce perfectly well. So thank you for that. So can you present also the Comtal, your farming philosophy, and why took you to make skin contact since 2009, and why did you start? What you took from the experience, and where are you today with all that?
Okay. Yes. Wow. Hello, everybody, and greetings straight out of Comtal from the middle of the harvest. We are quite busy right now. The sparkling base wines nearly finished fermentations. We're going to bottle Patnet tomorrow. There are some Grüners having a good time on the skins for still a while. And all the single vineyard parcels, they grapes still hang around for a couple of more days outside. And and if the weather gods are cool, we're going to have a beautiful harvest, and hopefully finishing in about 2 weeks. Yes, our winery, it's my wife, me, with a cool young team. We are producing and provoking a bit Grüner Veltliner and Rieslings in quite a different styles, from a new interpretation of the great Comtal classic terroirs to really natural skin fermentations on the Grüner. And when you grow up on a super traditional family winery, it's quite easy to fall asleep in tradition and don't make your minds up. But I had the feeling I need to get out of the Comtal and take time to travel in the new and the old wine world. And this was also those places where I got in contact to natural winemakers in France or in Australia. And this was also a time when Austria became quite a modern wine country, when everything was kind of becoming bigger, louder, faster. We decided to step back and trying to make wines away from all the stuff we learned on university. And it's the mission of what can you get rid of and really get a real great wine. And on my travels, then there was a moment when I really realized what's the Comtal all about, actually, and that we have wonderful, unique types of soil. We have microclimates like crazy. Also, we are affected by climate change, but there are beautiful spots where we can produce cool climate, pure, classy, crystal clear whites in many different styles. And I think for every young winemaker, the most important part is to get a own very personal feeling of sense of place, to re-ask old questions on terroir. Although I'm working on the same vineyards like my grandfather was doing, terroir is changing. The climate completely changed in the last 30, 40 years. the soil type and quality of soil is changing as soon as you adapt to organic methods, as soon as you do your own compost. And it's just a very personal, sensitive relationship you need to build up. And then you think about taste, and you go through your vineyards and you have a picture in your mind, you feel the wind, you taste the grapes, and then you think, okay, what can this little piece or place on earth give me as an expression? And I was really a bit pissed off that many grüners were just fruit bombs. I also studied and learned how to flavor a Grüner Veltliner so it tastes like Sauvignon Blanc. Forget about this. This is really bad. It's getting better in Austria. We can do Grüner in a kind of Chardonnay style with new oak from all around the world. But that's not the thing that we became winemaker. And this is not, you can't talk about terroir here. And so we stepped back, and how can we make a style that's quite unique and that's quite hard to copy anywhere else? And also in our beginnings, when it comes to natural wines, we copied things. We bought amphoras from Georgia. We put Grüner Veltliner in for 6 months or even longer. We opened, we said, wow, interesting, but is this a style that really can become a tradition in natural wines in the capital? Or do we may need to work on our own tradition? And in the Camptal, I think there was not a real tradition on skin fermentation. So I think if my father would have fermented Grüner in an open top red wine fermenter, I think my grandfather would have kicked his ass out of the winery. But it's good that we are now living in an open, at least wine world where everything is possible. But we also have, I think, a certain responsibility on shaping a style which might become a tradition in 20, 30 years when it comes to skin fermentation wines from the Camptal region.
I think this is fascinating that you are saying that this is a technique that can be used to even express better your place, and that you are putting yourself in that perspective on rethinking about what is the best way I can transmit my terroir and the quality of my farming in this grape where I am from, not only just for today, glue wine or whatever, but really to be able to carry on.
No, we have to think in generations.
You have to think in generation.
And I think I still believe that also when climate change is really hitting us harder, we still will stand for purity, for elegancy, and not for wines that are overpowered. And I must say, we actually started in 2009 the first skin fermentations. This was a time when I was still believing in the old tradition of the later the harvest, the better, like all the winemakers, all my parents told me. But when you harvest in November, and we have nearly every year the chance of maximizing the sugar, the grapes, but you're losing diversity. And the skin fermentation started because we thought, okay, tannins it's even at tannic acidity. So maybe if I harvest very late and my Grüners are tasting yellow and there is no acidity left anymore, maybe parts of skin ferments can bring me back to structure. In the meantime, we're a bit smarter, we have a bit more knowledge. We know that the whole term of physiological ripeness, I don't call it this anymore, I just call it the ripeness of taste. And we changed our way of cultivation. We are harvesting earlier. We're getting in our grapes on an earlier stage, a full ripening on aromas and structure, and we still have enough acidity. But once you start with skin fermentation, we were super surprised, and I want to be surprised by things. This is, I think, the biggest motivation to go off the beaten tracks and to find solutions for the future. But I was just completely flashed by what kind of tastes are in the Grüner Veltliner, which I never discovered before when you do a whole bunch or just a short maceration. And suddenly the spectrum of diversity is changing. And we were like little kids and following our nose and tongue and exploring. And often it was 2 steps too far, and then we stepped back, 1 step back. But I think this is our mission we have here to think about living here now, respect tradition and the old knowledge from the family, but we're living in times where we think everybody should think about our future.
No, I think what you're saying about the fact that the terroir changed even from your grandfather because of the variation of climate episodes, which also probably affect how the plant is behaving on top of course, your organic farming and the work you are doing for the biodiversity. Just even, I'm sure the berry don't taste the same. The way that the plant is growing is berry, you get also a lot of things in the skin that you may not have had before, that now the plant is also giving you guys to enhance or to show. So, but what what is striking with me with this wine is like, it's not like, if I taste it, I'm not going to call that skin macerated as a style first. The style is not going to jump in my face at all. And I think this is really really impressive, because what I'm going to think about is like, okay, I'm probably I can still get some nuance of the varietal of the grape itself, but behind I'm there is no that greed of that the skin maceration orange thing that is kind of make my pre-inform my opinion. And I'm going to go and say which type of soil I am, which type of climate I am, where I am. Like, it's transcending the style, and I really like that with this wine, which I think is a really big success.
It's the idea of bringing those both worlds together. I'm trying to harmonize things, and we learn so much from the natural part. We learn so much from the classic part. And when it comes to winemaking here on Belle Naturelle, for example, which is it started like an educational wine that people are not afraid anymore of natural wines. And the biggest success I had that when my father got into natural wine, and he's 78 now. So if you're open-minded, you're never too old for natural wine. And this was something where we said, okay, we need to work very carefully, because our terroir, our soils, we have quite a good ripe acidity structure. Mm-hmm. And when this is in combination with too much of tannins, this can be quite out of balance. And this is why we are using, or we adopted the technique of skin fermentation. We are staying a bit shorter on the skins. And also we are very carefully, when we separate the free run from the pressing juice, the pressed wine out of the grapes. And you see two different wines. The one is very bright and nearly reductive with many herbs and just the idea of aromas, what you get from the skins. And the other part is the really orange tannic part. And this was something where we said, okay, wow. First we put everything together because we just followed the technique. But now we are really tasting and separating them. And then we're going to taste after 6 months how it melanges together. And often we don't take 100% of the pressing part, which would make this wine much more orangey. But I like to have wines in both cases, wines that tell you a story about variety, about soil, about the vegetation period, about origin. And also a bit about the idea the winemaker and vigneron had in mind. And so this is, for me, I still want to have the Campbell attributes of precision, clearness, sap flow, and yeah.
I think you manage it. And the word precision is an incredibly precise wine, but it's also very drinkable, and it's also a free wine in a way. There is it's not like the wine is constrained in any kind of form, but it's just, there is a real harmony, and there is just detailed. What I call precision would be more like it's a very detailed, layered wine with a lot of things to say. So
I like the filigranity and understatement and the multi-layers, and without sounding esoteric, but I want to make wines that lift you up, that are, I don't know, that gives you a good time, that are motivating you, that
and you want to drink.
Yeah.
But we are going to have to go to stop and move on to Christian. But can I ask you the same question about what as a winemaker and taster? But you kind of answer already, like this type of work, like push you to, or how to talk and taste in a different way? And how do you like to call your wine? But I think you already kind of answered that.
I would say it's skin fermentation, skin contact wine. I would not call it orange, actually.
Yeah.
And in terms of language, I mean, in the meantime, Stephanie and I, we developed a kind of a secret wine language. We don't search it for special aromas.
Yeah.
When we taste, we're looking for, has the wine a center, or where is the center, or is it a center where it's vibrating more on the upper part, or how is the verticalness of the wine?
Yeah.
We talk about the quality of reduction, when it's becoming stinky. Is it good stinky, or is it really over the top stinky? And it's more like, because aromas, they come and they go. We can't influence them, and we just want to make sure that we kind of destroy all kinds of primary aromas, because they are volatile anyway. And so we are searching for the real aromas. They are long lasting, and I just opened a bottle of 2015, and the aromas or the style is changing, but still the idea behind of the structure of the center, this stays the same.
That's a very good point. I like the way you are talking about center and all that. And I think this wine for me will make me think also about salivation and the different type of salivation I'm getting out of them. Between the skin and the acidity of the skin contact, you are discovering new way of your mouth salivating and reacting to it. And saltiness is incredible. It's so fun. It's so interesting for me. But we have a whole new vocabulary to create. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Erwin. That's awesome. Great job. And 19 so fresh, despite obviously
super young still. It's really cute.
You want to age it. You definitely want to age it and see what it's gonna be like. But awesome. So I know we're a little bit over the time, so for those of you that can't stay, I'm sorry, but it's like I spoke too much. It's my fault. But if you can stay, I think the next conversation is going to be really, really awesome. If Christian is here.
Hello.
Hey, Christian. Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, Christian. Yeah, you are on now. Good to see you, Christian. Thanks a lot for being also with us and agreeing to chat about a very special cuvée. That's is it you in the vineyard or is it you by the lake?
Pardon?
Is it you? It's you in a vineyard or it's you by the lake?
You mean the photo?
Yeah.
No, it's coming out of the lake, like Loch Ness, jumping out of the lake. Yes.
Well, but it's I'm really but thanks for also taking the time, and I didn't thank you guys, but it's true it's harvest right now, so thanks again for being here while there is fermentation and grape picking and plus the family plus everything. So thank you again. So
yeah, thank you for thinking about what I'm doing and about the job that I'm doing. I just can say that I'm taking it very serious to make wine, and I just do my best with the vintage that we finished 1 week ago with the 2020. And I tasted the 2020 barrels that we are using for the Himmel auf Erden Maische vergoren, the Himmel auf Erden #2 today. And I just can tell you there is one of it that is like really tea-ish, that is like a very vibrant tea on a certain level of green tea, and then the second one was like an essentia of mandarins. You know mandarins, the fruit.
I totally know mandarin.
Yeah, mandarin. Yeah. So
you are happy with the 2020?
Very much, yes. Yeah, I think it was the aromatic reminds me of the 2010. That was the first experience that I bottled.
Yeah, because you have been working with you have been trying and experimenting and working and always searching, but with the skin since a long time now.
Yes.
Or 6, and you're making just one wine.
It took me, yes, but I want to say something to this later. It took me 5 years of try and error and try again and not giving up until I was so happy with the vintage of 2010 that I bottled it and named it with my name very big and popular on it, because that's also a thing, you know. And in these days, in 2010, the world was not ready like nowadays for wine that I made in this way. So it was a special time and it was a very special wine, but the people loved it. It was like, for them, it was like a juice. It was not recognized as wine, it was like a juice. And this was, in total, this was what I had in mind. I was not, I mean, when I did this wine, I was 27, 26-year-old, and you have to understand, I was not thinking about reflecting the terroir of a vineyard or things like that. I just wanted to make wine that was giving you more energy than it took, and I wanted to make a wine that was like a juice to drink. And you can pair this wine with whatever the food you want, it will always lift it up. And yeah, and the method I was using, it came more or less out of my inner feeling, because I wanted to come to the core of the wine, you know, really getting to the core, getting to the point. And it came because when I was a kid, we were tasting the grapes like crazy. And so I could see that the muscats, they had a lot of flavor in the skins. So I thought with a classic pressing, you don't get this flavor out of the skins. I need to do this kind of mash fermentation and to extract the aromatic. With a classic pressing, you don't get this aromatic out. And so it stays in the mash, and then you make a compost out of it. So the compost smells great, but not the wine. So this is something I wanted to change.
Lucky compost.
Yeah, lucky compost and lucky animals and the worms. They had muscat aromatic, but not me in the glass. So I had to change this.
So you are working with multiple grapes for you try multiple grapes from
yes.
for the skin,
and it is a bit of various regarding the style of the vintage. Because not every grape in every vintage has a super nice aroma for fermentation with the skins. So cooler vintages are asking for different than warmer ones. So it's changing with Muscat, Muscatella, Grüner and Scheurebe, which is an Austrian special variety. Yeah.
So yes, every year the blend may be different and the techniques may be different. Because you're going to adapt to the grape.
Yes, I have recorded so far 24 different versions of macerating white wine on the skins. And I think this experience is quite important to create a wine in the end that is fun but serious at the same time. You know, this is a small path that you are going between high drinkability, but also being serious enough to be recognized as a cool wine. You know, you understand what I mean? Yeah.
No, absolutely. To get, I think, go back to that idea of a certain precision and
yes,
just
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And therefore, there should not be any oak flavors. For instance, it should be as pure as possible. And therefore, I'm using big barrels from Austrian copper, which is fantastic, and not small barriques or anything like that. So as pure fruit as possible. I think, yeah.
You are saying about like you want this wine to taste like juice and have this superb aromatic you get when you taste the grapes and being serious at the same time, but you have also being a fanatic worker in a vineyard and you are coming from a very specific part of the world. You say you are not thinking about terroir in your wine. Is it something that is a bit more in the back of your mind now, or are they saying that that wine still comes from a specific part of on Earth? And
yes, the recognition of terroir came during the last years when I found out that the wines that I'm doing are showing a lot of it, but it was not in origin my intention. I was always searching for the holy grail of wine, and I never thought that I never thought about expression of terroir. But nowadays, many people come up and say, "Oh, this was a nice minerality that you had in your wine." So this is a very good example that me as a winemaker is just not talking about the terroir. It has the drinkers have to talk about it, not me, the winemaker.
even though you spend most of your time in your vineyard, and you are the one feeling the place and the plant and the light and the diversity.
If I can transport it and transform, if I can achieve that, I transform the terroir in the glass and make it smell and tastable for the customers and for the drinkers and the sommeliers, then I did not do a good job. Then I should change. I should become whatever, a conductor or something. I don't know. No. But not a winemaker.
Yes, stay winemaker. I think it's okay. I think you're doing okay so far.
No, I do my best. Really, every day I do my fucking best.
Did you did you learn? You were mentioning 2010. Do you learn from tasting your wine with time? Like right now we're on 119, which I think is really great to be able to taste this wine young and drink them young, but with tasting them with time. How do you see? Did you learn from your first experience in 10 and how they age today? And
fantastic.
Yeah,
I got it blind. I think at Christmas in a restaurant in Copenhagen, the famous Noma, they were serving it blind to me, and I said, "Wow, that's a very interesting juice from mandarins." I thought maybe somebody was experimenting with fruit of mandarin together with wine in a bit of fermentation. It was a very special wine, so I decided for the 2020 vintage, I did exactly the same methods that I did in 2010.
So you're going to see if it tastes like mandarin and...
Yeah, no, it's not because of the method, but I thought I made a good job in 2010, so I completely repeated it as far as I could remember.
That's... Are you noting everything? Are you keeping notes on every techniques every year of what you are doing? Even though you don't want to talk about data, numbers, facts, I know it's not what, but are you keeping that on a notebook for yourself so you can remember things?
Yes.
And
I have little recordings for all this, but I also think it's not important for people to talk about if this wine is 30 days on the skins or 40. So where's the difference?
Yeah.
I mean, there is no big change between 30 and 40 days. And sometimes there's not even a difference between 30 and 50 days. Just there is a little more oxidation then, but that's it. If there is tannin, if it's 100% of tannin, there is nothing left of tannin that can be extracted. You know, one day it's over.
Mm-hmm.
So all these number discussions, I think they are quite ridiculous for me.
So how do you want?
Confusing because people are searching for it like they are searching for. I just like red wines that are aged for 24 months in a barrel. This is the same. You know what I mean? So this is a misunderstanding a bit, maybe. No?
Yeah, it can lead to some preconception also. A lot of preconception that are damaging, I think, to retest the wine. But I think it's the same thing from a lot of other. I think the example would be a whole cluster, for example, for red wine, having the whole cluster about, okay, it's having, but if you start to think like that, you just don't taste the wine, really.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you these two last questions because I know that unfortunately time flies, but you talked a little bit about that, you don't talk really about the techniques, but in terms of vocabulary, of way of tasting as a winemaker, as a drinker, does this type of wine change the way you are expressing yourself when you want to talk about them? And obviously, I think you have a way to want to describe this cuvée because it's put on your label. You show a very specific name for that cuvée, which is not orange wine. Do you mind just quickly develop on that, and then we'll take some. I will talk about Gerhard, and we'll take some Q&A.
Yes, I just there was a band in my youth days. I mean, it was not me playing in this band. It was a band called Maische, and Maische is the Austrian word for mash, for if you mash up the berries, you know, with the juice. This is the mash, and this band was called Maische. And since I started to make wine, I always wanted to make a wine called Maische. And so we have this Maische vergoren, which means fermented with the mash or things like that. So this was the idea behind all. Okay. And if I would make wine from oranges and not from grapes, I would call it orange wine. So, but not from grapes. I mean, this is quite strange for me to call it orange wine. So, yeah. But
yeah. No, I just wanted to have. I think
if I was French, I would say c'est la vie. Huh?
Bah, c'est la vie. But that's what that means is there is an extraordinary dynamic on that. But the wine is also it's also a meeting of opposite because there is so many powerful intensity, but they are not in your face. If you see what I mean, it's like extraordinary high quality tea that you can overbrew or brew, but is always going to deliver and is never going to explode. But they are all very. I want to
tell you something very interesting. I have many people visiting that are in the tea business from Japan, from Czech Republic.
I'm not surprised. Huh?
And they want to talk with me about this method because they tasted this wine and it reminded them on their methods like making tea. So it's very interesting to talk with tea people about making wine and reverse. So
I agree.
I'm quite honored by this. Well,
I agree. I learned a lot how to talk about this type of wine by spending way more time with a tea specialist. That really helped me.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last years, it is also coming coffee people. And with coffee people, we talk about fermentation and extraction in general. Because to create a wine like the Himmel auf Erden, the 19, for instance, which is 11.5 alcohol, but is a full power and quite intense wine on the palate and in the finish. The grapes need to be in a very special condition, and also you have to be very careful in the cellar not to lose this special
quality.
Taste. Yeah, this is. I mean, one wrong move and like this, and you lose everything that the grapes have.
No, you're dealing with very fragile compound. At the same time, you are all working with very strong compound and very fragile compound, which is like. Yeah.
We are playing like kind of Mikado playing. You know, you play Mikado. It is a very fragile game. No?
But that's a great bottle too, really great bottle. So that time is flying. I'm just gonna do I really wanted also to have a wine from Gerhard that was on the kind of pioneer of that style, and it was interesting. They told me nobody really likes the wine in that time, and he waited.
I say goodbye to everyone and enjoy what I'm doing. Thank you for listening.
You want to stay for some Q&A, Christian?
Pardon?
We have like 2 minutes of question. Do you want to
stay?
Stay. We just gone off to you. So just the perfect day for Gerhard and Brigitte, which is, I think it's also...
hungry. I'm very hungry.
Oh. But let's, if the time, Amanda, the time is really running out right now. Yeah, so just, I really recommend you guys also to test Perfect Day because it's a whole other, also example of also working with more aromatic grape, which sometimes are also too much kind of hiding the path. You know, I think aromatic grapes are extraordinary, almost too sexy, and sometimes they just like take everything. And I think this is a very superb example of how to work with Muscat especially. And the ways I've been dealing with is really for them to make an extraordinary, highly drinkable, but perfect integration and information of their terroir. So Gerhard, I think it's a wine that is a little bit easier to get in terms of the aromas, but you need a little bit more aging also, because right now it's very, very floral. It's very, very exuberant. I tasted the most over a week, and after a week, first the wine was holding extraordinarily well, no sulphur in the wine, but all the layer was starting to show off, and I think that's a beautiful wine to age. So I encourage you to retest and go for this one. So sorry, we can go too much after that. We're going to take a couple of questions. Maybe, yeah.
I tasted this perfect day as well, and I have to say I also like it a lot. So Pitnauer, good producer.
And the same thing that all of you guys, a lot of power, density, but extraordinary freshness, extraordinary freshness. So tannin and extraction, the way you are working with the skin, aromatic, it's not because of that you don't get that definition, precision, and freshness. I'm very, very impressed. But they're old wines I want to age. I'm very happy to taste them now, but I really want to age them. And it's part of my education as a sommelier to see how they are going to evolve. And I'm fascinated by it. And I think they're going to be way fresher than a lot of direct press white wine that we can think about. Not in your range, but in general. So Amanda, if you have some question for all of us.
Yes, we have a question here from Katie Canfield. She's asking who uses stems versus no stems, and does that change the maceration time / pH when you use the stems?
I think that's a question for you guys.
I think Alvin wants to answer.
Yeah, he's the pH guy.
Alvin, the pH master.
Yeah, he's the pH master, yes.
Now you can hear me, maybe.
Now it's better.
Yes, we can hear you.
Depending, so there is no recipe. So we have some years where we do also with whole bunch. I can't tell you if this is changing the pH. I don't know. I don't think that it's changing the pH, or Mr. Cheetah, you know, master?
No, I don't think that it's changing the pH.
I don't think so, no. It's, I just had the feeling that often when you do it with whole bunch, it either, I don't know, I think this was the guy of Duchac telling me one time that he had the experience that when he does his Pinot with more whole bunch or with more stalks, that the stalks can even absorb certain tannins. I never tried it, I don't know. But for us, it's more, in the last years, we went away from too much stems in the skin nuts.
No, to be honest, for me, there is no answer on this question that is right or wrong. Depending on the condition of grapes, depending on the condition of stems, regarding to the vintage, to the style of the vintage, was it hot, cool? So in the best, it's the experience of the winemaker to use stems or not. And the pH usually is the pH, it changes with other things more than with the stems, I think. And what is the pressing is way nicer with stems instead of no stems.
The only thing what I can say about that part is that I'm working, so I'm doing skin contact with both. But the only experience what we had, if we work, with whole clusters, with the whole bunches, we are not turning or something. We just let them like a maceration carbonique. We just let them untouched as good as possible, and just look that there is as less as possible oxygen with the grapes. And yeah, I tried once skin fermentation with stems and squeezing everything, and also during fermentation mixing them, and the result was that at the end it was way too tannic. So it was the tannins was very, very aggressive, and the result for me from that project was that if you work skin fermentation with stems, everything's fine, but don't touch them. Put them inside your vessel and let them ferment. They ferment slowly, step by step, but don't touch it. About the pH, I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Christoph, while I have you, there's like a comment question here. It just says from iPhone, so I don't really know who it's from, but it says, I heard you once gave out rocks with your phone number on them instead of business cards. Is this true?
Well, it's I read it already. I have to laugh about it. So it's kind of almost true. I at the very beginning I made business cards made out of oak. You know, like out of oak. What we usually use here for our barrels. So that's that part. And so it's semi true. And the other part is that when I'm traveling, I always have I call it my stone to go, or my conglomerate to go. So I have always my conglomerate with me in a little bit smaller version that one behind me, and I let them in the country that I'm visiting to people who are interested about the terroir and origin and all that stuff. But to put the phone number on it, I think it's pretty hard. You have to be very creative then.
Absolutely. Are there any more questions for our speakers?
I had a question just for Arwin about from Evan about how Belle Naturelle influenced or did working and making Belle Naturelle influence the rest of the lineup for the more classic line.
In general, the skin fermentation. So we don't talk much about it, because often when you talk to wine people and you tell them, oh, this is a bit of skin fermentation, they immediately smell tannins, which is not true if you do it in a very slight way. But we just lose the fear of that every skin fermented wine needs to be full of tannins. For us, often we use skin fermentation also just for a couple of days. In this case, we sometimes even do a whole bunch, like a semi-Maceran carbonic. But again, this is not to get more tannins. The tannins I like, and this is true for getting more stability, also when you work on low or no sulfur. But when you fall in love with working on the skins and you like the diversity on aromas, this had some influence also to our classic wines.
Yeah, I'm sure you are all feeding yourself from all these projects. Like everything you're doing anyway, you are feeding and learning from what you are doing in a winery. You never stop learning.
And yeah, there is something you can remember. And like Christian said, that 2010, it's kind of similar, but it's different. But it's so good. Also, we are all still young winemakers, but for us, it's so important to gain as much knowledge from every vintage, so we can save it somewhere, and then we might use it in this special moment, in this special vintage.
Yeah, especially right now with everything changing very quickly, continuing to have more practice, more tools for you to handle climate variation and ripeness and all that.
Yeah.
But I think we're gonna have just like 1 minute from you on that. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time during a very, very busy time, but also for taking the time to talk and saying, I have to admit, it is a pleasure to exchange with you and to talk with you because of the way we can learn and just learn from each other. So I just really was very happy that we could present your wine today. I think they are really special wine with their own vision and expression, even though you are all definitely dedicated farmers and like first and foremost in a vineyard. But you are rewriting a new page of, I think, how we are going to taste wine in the future. So thanks for doing that. And it's super exciting what's ahead of us, even though the time right now is terrible. But there is sign of light, like baby girl, like Christoph with his, and so I just can only thank you for being here today and for making what you are doing, guys. So it's really amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining. Bye.
Bye, Elena.
Thank you for joining, everyone. Sorry we ran out of time. If you want, you can email me your questions and I can relay them to the team. If not, this video has been recorded, so it'll be sent out to attendees for you to access after the fact. Again, my name's Amanda. You can reach me at Amanda@TheRealHouseWine, or you can reach Constance through the Austrian Wine Marketing Board. And have a lovely rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you, guys. That was fantastic. And thanks for your wine. Christian, thanks for joining. Arwin, say hi to Stephanie, and Christophe.
Ciao.
Congrats again. Constance, Amanda, thanks for organizing. Bye, guys. Thanks for attending, all of you. Bye-bye.
Good, thanks.
Vielen Dank.